Ladies and gentlemen, likers and subscribers, hobbyists, model makers, nerds of all kinds, welcome. I'm the Glue and Paper Guy. It's been probably a week and a half since I last videoed on this project. I am ready to construct the bogies, the wheels, for both of the rovers that we're working on here. I have, as you'll recall, two kits. This from Paper Replica by a gentleman by the name of Julius Perdana, and the date here is 2011. The other kit is by a gentleman who goes by John J. I have, in the Lacuna in shooting, I have found that John J has left us for a better place about 2 years ago. So I can't speak to him directly. I've reached out and asked for anyone who might give me anything else they might know about John and his work. I've since put two and two together and found that John's responsible for things that I've been seeing on the eGift shop and other sites for many years. The first part of this will be assembly of one of John J's bogies, focused on the specifics of how I pulled this little trick off. The second will be a similar sort of kit with the Julius Perdana Rover. So, to the main point. You are here. This is the first piece of what we're going to do today is John J's 124 scale Curiosity. Specifically, we're going to complete the bogies, intended to represent very well what's on the actual vehicle, but flat. I may not belabor the construction of the arm in this 124 kit because it's the same process as the bogies. Laminate some paper, rinse, repeat. Although when you look at it, scope creep tells you that those ought to be just a little bit bigger than Q-tip shafts. Might be quick and easy to make them round. I'll construct the second bogie offline. With the kit, we have excellent step-by-step numbered directions with clear, concise pictures. Somewhat the same as Tom Noteboom does, with perhaps some enhancements that make them easier to use. I had to go collect up a bunch of soda straws, etc. So we're going to end up to a point where we have one bogie with one straw sticking out, and then do some of the same process with the other kit and move on. A couple of materials that are different that I decided to use. I referred to scope creep. Scope creep is a project management term where you start something and then you do more and you do more and you do more. As I go through these kits, the model informs where it wants to have more detail that's easy to achieve in the same style, etc. So it became immediately apparent that the back of the support for these wheels has to be more substantial, or you're never going to get a wheel that turns. My favorite material, the back of a tablet. That's of some thickness. I've used elsewhere for the bogies, as you see, and I've gone through this. This is laminated on both sides now, and you may notice that there's almost no imperfection here as the paper shrinks again while the water evaporates and the glue cures. So this is a beautifully laminated piece of paper, which is actually strong in somewhat the same sense as plywood. It is stronger than the original was. We'll cut this one out because obviously I already have the other one. Use that as a demonstration. And moreover, if I have a wheel, I now need a back for the wheel. So my second print came into play almost immediately. Each of these wheels will be backed with another piece. How do I make a wheel turn? Well, you need an axle. The Phoenicians knew that. So I availed myself of my pin drill with 2 different diameter tips. This is one set of pin drill bits that I have. The other set is warm and happy in my Dremel kit in the garage. So I more or less arbitrarily chose until I picked the material for the axles. That being the nail that holds up a picture. These things are common as cordwood. They're just like every nail. They're a piece of wire that's been stamped and sharpened. My side cutters wouldn't hack it, so these guys came into play. More torque, easy to do, and I eyeballed a length. That one's going to be tough to focus as always. Let's get that on my palm where you can see it. It really is. There's intended to be 2 different lengths. One for the hinges in the bogie and one to go in the back of the wheels. So we have a series of those. I should have 3 in this assembly kit. If you're going to cut one of these, things will fly. Same things I told my students when I was a assistant student in ITT when I was very young. Think about where those parts are going to go. So when I cut it, I wrap my fingers around it. The blade here is intended to go through very stiff stock. So what it really does is neck and crimp that wire, not cut it directly. That's okay, because I don't send a point ballistic across my office to land in the dog's eye, or mine, or land in my foot, which is where they usually end up. There was no rocket science making the length. The length was derived by laying layers of paper together and making guesses. I'm going to get rid of that so that I don't hurt myself with it. The other thing I did was, we need hubs. Somehow the wheel has to turn. So we're down to a layered effect. This one already has this. Let's see what I can get here. Yeah, that's probably best kittywampus like that. This one already has the little nail cut to size in the middle of it. A hole drilled to mount, and then you see the, basically you see the light through that puppy because it's that big. If I pass over something big, I can see it on the camera. And another funny thing, I can clean that up quite easily, as I did on the other wheel. The material never disappears when you cut. It turns into sawdust or goes somewhere and does something. So I've got a good, clean, fresh blade here, and I can give that a shave. Trying to make it look easy, because I've done it a bunch of times already. I'm going to cut up my wheel if I do it. Point being, if you take that flash off, the thing will turn smoother. And if you don't take the flash off the center, which would be nearly impossible anyway since it's already in the wheel, you have some friction so that the wheels don't just freewheel or lop over to the side or do other silliness. When you're paying attention, you get this result. The flash is gone from that backside, and yet the surface is not removed far enough out to make it apparent that that something's going on there. And you probably can't, well, you may be able to see it. See the flash under that? That's my friction point. The bogies themselves are of a thicker material because they need to have, it looks like I picked the wrong one. Doesn't matter for the moment. They need to have some strength and some depth. They're going to have to hold the model up. Thicker material, same story, different tablet. Trust me, it's hard to get this thickness anymore on the back of a tablet without paying way too much money for a tablet. But it's worth it if you got someplace else to put the ruled paper. I've been known to walk into Home Depot, buy some of these, rip the backs off of them, hand them the paper, and walk out. They look at me like I'm nuts. I'll go off camera here and see if I have the other part. Actually, we're going to have to construct it. Was it somewhere? There it is. According to the directions, the long shaft goes on the outside. So you know, wherever this is going to be, and you got to pay real close attention to right and left. Wherever this is going to be, that long hole is going to be on the end. So this one goes here, and the other one goes the other place. So if I have this wheel, I need this axle. There's my piece. And that's going to go back in the to build pile off camera. As to cutting, this stuff is heavy. This blade is as new as, you know, I changed, this is a fresh blade I changed just several days ago. The point of that is I have the best tip and the best edge, and I will cut cleanly through this heavy material faster. I forgot to take out my ruler. Having it close to hand resolves that issue. Smartest thing to do is probably rough this out first. Fresh blade will go through that quickly and that cleanly. It's obvious I've already roughed it out of the bigger piece of cardboard. In a very real sense, I'm carving. I'm taking this stuff down a little bit at a time to reveal the shape hidden within. Michelangelo, I think. If you're careful how you do this, you can retain all of the tiny detail. This guy has a tiny lip. A tiny, let's do this. There. Right there. And I've retained that on the other part. Again, right here. We want that to remain because that's an important part of the structure that represents actual hardware on the device. And of course, there's some subtlety to this joint that needs to be retained. You can accomplish that. I do circles in arcs or in a bunch of little straight lines. Been known to take the edge off of wood for something by just taking a bunch of straight cuts until I approximate a curve and then get after it with a sander. The idea is to represent the round object to the best of your ability by, you know, pulling the curve out of the cardboard. And these little arcs, don't put stress on the part you want to keep. They tend to curve the edge. And if you really want to get crazy with it, you can go back in, cut it with a file, you know, cut it down to final shape with a file. Think finish sanding. 300, 400. I've used 400 on this stuff, and it doesn't seem to turn it into fuzz. The fuzz, by the way, you can recover pretty simply by just dousing it in PVA. I'm not going to. There's no necessity for that here. You can approximate a pretty good curve just by doing that. And as you see, these are painted on the edges. Don't look at where the marker slipped, which we'll go through. see, it's a arc, 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 piece, piece, piece. And scraping this stuff out of the way is not just for show. I don't know which way I might turn this thing, and I don't want the gunk in the way and make me cause a problem. So I'm right on that corner in the part, and I leave this kind of space behind on each end. Now I can just take a tang off and it's gone. I'm going to do that here. And then I've been through this a million times, and I mean, it's an important part of the exercise, and so it's probably something I'll repeat. My good friend here, it has the beautiful virtue of having something to stop it from moving on the bottom. Everything I do when I cut is intended to protect the part. I can't cut my way backwards. I can't hurt myself unless I let the knife get crooked. Well, I'm not going to let the knife get crooked. I'm going to keep the knife perpendicular so that I achieve a straight edge. Costume makers, me on occasion, will, bevel. They'll cant the knife so that they get a 45. I'm through on this end. I'm not through on this end. I got to turn it around and pull it off by hand. I cut it off by hand. The whole point of the story is I now have a clean edge on the part without having to fight with it. Again, you take that down with some 400. You really wanted to go around to the end here with 400. I leave the curved piece for last so I can get in there with a knife and get at it and not ruin my part, because I want this distinct bit of black machinery to become a part of the model. So the cutting we will go, and we'll pick this up where the next piece happens. I have a pile of scrap, and I have now completed the cut for this part. Also have pairs. Right and left can be annoying and confusing. I tend to try to be real careful to keep them that way. I'm going to finish this and then we'll proceed with the construction of the other. Two things to pretty it up. This is a paint pen. In this case, 2 to 4 millimeter, and it's neutral gray 5. And if you don't know what this is, you're not paying attention. I don't know exactly what YouTube has to say about showing brand names. I try to avoid. Point being, if it works for you, it will work for this. You do not absolutely have to go out and buy this to make these things happen. You need some freaking gray paint, and you need some easily usable black ink. The thing about the black ink, this stuff bleeds. It bleeds like you wouldn't believe. On the other kit, we will use a different marker which bleeds less but does the job, or at least I'll demonstrate where I did it. So the point of the story is we want to make the edges pretty because we're trying to simulate a real thing. Real things don't look like cardboard on the edges. And I'm sighing because I already made a mistake. If you color on the side that is the money side, your marker will slip. That's just going to be out there. That's going to be a mistake that's never going to be missed. You know, it'll have to be displayed with that side hidden. If you do it the opposite way, when you miss, when you slip onto the ugly side and you don't hurt anything. So, you start from here so that when you pull the marker off, you go into the ugly. And the other thing is, if you watch really carefully, how much is this? See, you get that gray line is pretty prominent. Watch. It's gonna. Some places it'll stay, some places it'll disappear. But what's happening is the ink is absorbing into the edge of that paper. Well, fine, it's a black bar. If you don't, you want to remove the inconsistency, you just simply disappear it. Always keeping the pretty side where the ink will not slip. Like everything in life, there's compromises. Like everything in life, there are going to be situations where that won't happen because of the size or the shape. In general, if you do it that way, when you slip, you get that instead of having it in the middle of your part. I'm going to make all this black. I'll try to rip through this pretty quick. Since the ink bleeds, the tip will tickle its way up into these tiny spots and fill them. Don't have to work too hard at that. You can see some of the roughness of the edge there. I may have mentioned that I kind of regard this build of this kit as a plastico. It's a first time through a demonstrator. I will use a different level of caring and a different level of attention when I move on to the big 12 scale, because that's the living room version. I've heard people say it's a 4-footer. Well, if you look at it from 4 feet, it looks perfect. Well, these need to be 3 inches. I want to be able to look at them from, certainly the 12 scale, I want to be able to look at from very close up and enjoy the detail and the perfection. And never going to trick my eye. It's made of paper, but it's going to make me think. And if I put it on a base that emulates the surface of Mars, which by the way is only red on the surface, that's oxidation. You might say, wow, job. It's another place where I'm trying to tickle the tip in there, and I'm going to let the bleed do the work. You see that there's how clear that is. Yeah. See how the bleed came over on that flat surface? It just soaked there. I didn't do it. So it can be your friend and your enemy. Different markers do different things, just like different pencils do different things, just like different brushes do different things. They have characteristics. The ones you know well, you get to remember. You know exactly what the marker will do and exactly how you can make it dance. I'm impressed by my old skill with a craft knife. It's because since 2006, 2007, at a guess, I've been cutting circles with a craft knife and cutting these parts out with a craft knife. I know what cardboard will do. Another thought on that subject. What will cardboard do? Cardboard is wood. It has grain. Typically, the back of a tablet, the thicker it is, the cheaper it is, the more grain will be there. Differences in consistency. I didn't really need to do that either. I forgot what I did with the other ones. Covered them. I covered them with a piece of, to make the sides consistent, I just cut out yet another hub, covered it, and trimmed it to size if I needed to, so that the detail was consistent on both sides of the part. So I don't really need to cover that part. The other step is, and obviously I'll cover putting these on in a few minutes is exactly the same thing as what I did to cover this and make it look like that. I cut another circle and I put it on there. And I'm questioning in my mind, since I'm about to make that the inside of a hub, whether I'll bother on the other side. I may not, simply per expedience. These particular markers require this. And I tend to use a post-it note, because I have a billion post-it notes, to coax some paint onto the brush. I don't use them like markers, I use them more like brushes with lids. I have to pay attention to the where that stops. And I knew this stuff was pretty opaque. That goes back to knowing your materials. And it just disappears the snot out of that. Do it again. And if you pay close attention to John's directions, you'll see that he did similar things. I don't know that he went this far. It's hard to tell from just the pictures. And it looks like he photographed a beta, because in the directions, these aren't present. He didn't bother with the hubs. See there? So we actually have our pair there. You can see the either side, the right and the left. There are two steps to this piece, because I need depth to hold the pin. Same lamination trick, writ small, with no particular attention to the opposite side. It's not necessary. I'm going to glue that down. But I've included the hub and a little bit of the axle. I'll cut it off at its natural joint, so that it looks natural when it's put in place. And this piece gets, I'll marker that around, I'll hide it. This is for later. We're going to proceed on to actually finishing out a couple of wheels and showing what the bogie will look like when it's constructed for this kit. And I'll do the rest, and when we come into the next episode, there'll be, shining, beautiful bogies built, and it'll be ready to be plugged into the chassis as we construct it. How am I going to get them holes in there? Not as tough as it might have first appeared. I've already applied my calibrated eyeball here. I poked the stylus in there and gave myself a pilot hole. So how does one apply a calibrated eyeball? I guess you just are experienced. And you find the center. Let's see, where's the new? There it is. No, I actually did that one too. Point being, either you find the center by eye, which is easy here because there's like little bolt symbols all around it, and then poke yourself a pilot hole, or you do what I did on these. It's apparent on some of them, on others it may not be. I actually put a circle template around that, marked the two perpendicular lines, and then laid a straight edge across it and got a very, very fine pencil line in the center, and then poked the center where there was offset from the pencil or the scribe. I eyeballed it. So these will become the backing of the wheels and allow it to. They'll be the axle will be fixed in this. This whole thing will rotate, or perhaps it'll. I don't know. We'll see. So it would make a certain amount of sense to. We're going to set these guys aside in the assembled parts bin. I'm going to put a wheel on and then assemble a wheel. Again, I have got my nail in the middle. Well, the nail's silver. You get away with the silver because there are other details that are silver. And I can go back and fix that later, which I probably will do. But I think that the finished pieces, I'm going to do this with. So it takes a minute for that tip to fill and turn into a brush. So I push down to get the tip. There it is. See, now I got some paint on it. And gray. Drying time, so it's pointless to trouble myself about it now. We'll see if those are ready when we go to put it together. I already have, let's see where we are. I would join these fore and aft sections last, because I don't want to break nothing. So I want to focus on the wheels first. I've already done the holes and been very thorough about it. You said I didn't bother to back these two, and I think I'm going to not, because I think it's superfluous. One of the things that happens as you do this is you figure something new out as you proceed. And if the sixth wheel is going to look different than the first wheel on the first time you build a kit. You can make the case that you might even want to just simply tandem build two of the same thing at once with an idea that this one's a 4-footer and this one's a 6-incher. The second always being better than the first. And that's really apparent when you go to the other set of wheels. Because the first one, you can see 100 different places. You can also see a lot of scope creep on those wheels, and we'll get to that. One of these guys already has its hole poked. Well, I'm thinking about it. Let's just drill it. Where is my drill? It's supposed to be right to hand. I use two separate bits, two different sizes. There it is. That I think is the bigger. Easy enough to find out because the diameter of this hole will be more or less exactly the same, and it is. Well, I want my hub to be at the same point. So this is a unmodified hub. There's actually, I think I put a pilot hole on there. Maybe so, maybe no. Anyway, that's easy. Ain't rocket science. If the hub's going to end up that way anyway, it puts me the hub on the back. And holds the hub and marks the hole. The more I think about it, the more I think these are going to end up being fixed anyway, so it's sort of superfluous. The right thing to do would be to apply these. So just put them on. Because then I can drill into them. I'll put a pin in that. because I'm concerned about making sure that nothing occludes this joint and it still rolls. So how do I do this? Where do I put the glue is important. Well, the wheel's blindingly obvious. It's going to go on that way. And result in something like that. Not the most professional. And the more I think about it, the more I think that's the conclusion I've already come to. There's going to be super glue involved here. So if the super glue is present down there, it will catch the whole magilla on the way in. Speaking of, that took exactly as long as you saw. That being the case, no point do anything except use the one that's already finished. Magnetic pliers. So, bottom line, I got to make sure I have everything right. I don't want to wake up with wheels on the wrong side of the tracks. I got a wheel. Make sure I got a painted hub here. It appears to be painted. Yes, it is. Other projects have required magnets, and so all of my pliers now have somewhat of a field on them. Make it look easy. Got a hold of the shaft there and got it lined up. I'm just going to make the point. There it is. It's through. This element wants to rotate against this element. I don't want any glue in there. So this element rotates against this element. I don't want any glue in there. But I have absolute latitude elsewhere. That being the case, I take my right side, I put it in here. And it's not like I had any great foreknowledge. I invented this as we go. Press those two together. Lay that down. Hold my breath. CA. I got a hole in it already? I don't have a hole in it already. I got a hole in it already? That's got a hole in it already. CA in the hole. Too much probably. Less is always more, particularly with this gel CA. Because you get stuff like that. Easy to fix. I just if you get CA on your finger, just rotate the part. It'll peel away. It will not take your skin off, and it's not going to be like the medical shows. You're not going to be bonded to your girlfriend permanently. And at this rate, I'm probably going to have to add some more CA. Fairly partly cloudy for a first try. Money. A little bit of wiggle, because I didn't get it as deep as I wanted it to. But that standing proud like that's not a bad thing, because I can go back in there with the paint again and fix it. So there's one wheel, and we'll do the junction in a similar way. Let's go ahead and make a wheel. And we can jump cut to the other set while I can finish that stuff up off camera. There's a wheel already cut. I want to color it first. And the paint has to dry. The paint will be wet. This is nice and smooth. There's no... This is not smooth. If I'm going to use something that is wax or something to transfer color, I want something smooth so I don't get humps in this and bumps in this. I learned that the hard way. So in this case, I used this is just a map pencil, nothing special. I used it on the other wheels, so it's kind of stuck now. You see I get variations in color, which I'm not certain is all that big a deal on the inside of a wheel. But I don't get hot spots, dark lumps, near as bad as you might otherwise, because there are some right here where I'm working now. The idea to try to make the pencil give you, as smooth a color as possible, and what I've achieved here is as few defects as is possible with this process, because the paper has grain and will be highlighted as you apply the wax-based pencil and the wax-based color. I brag all the time on watercolor pencils. Lieutenant Commander Laurie just used watercolor pencils to create a card the other day and was incredibly impressed. Watercolor pencils are not wax, they are paint, and they lay better color. If you want a big fancy set, prepare yourself to pay for them. So I think in this case, I figure out a way to get both gray and black and white. Then the puce and magenta is sort of, you don't have to worry about that. Haven't tried. Someday I might. Making this round goes into, there's a lot going on with that. These I did the edges in gray, so I think I have to repeat that. On the other kit, that's when I whooped out the marker. And the bleed on here, on this edge, is really not too bad on this paper. These I also left, let's see. See that square end? Well, that's the demarcation to make the correct diameter of circle. I left that here. On the other kit, I'll show you an alternate way that tends to hide that seam to a greater degree. So I need that to be a circle. Well, I got lots of circle stuff here. I could use a bunch of things. Conveniently, I got a craft blade that's smooth. I've got a pencil. Pencil's got more area. I can play more games with that. Got the marker. Got a lot of things. You'd almost do the... when I think about it, the marker's probably best because it's closest in diameter of the wheel. On the tubes and the other kit, I do this progressively. So I got a roundness now, and I'll be bending over I'll be bending over this side, and I got a roundiness now. Basically, I could do the color at any time, but it's sometimes easier to do it on a flat surface. 6 of one, half dozen the other. Money side away from you. When you use map pencils or those watercolor pencils, you do this a lot, they get a rut in them, which actually helps you because it goes all the way around the paper without rolling over the edge. I don't have a rut in this because I just sharpened it. You saw, I don't know whether you noticed or not, that I paid attention to the crease where those parts, where the tangs are going to fold over. And paper has dimension. Paper has an edge and two sides, always. Very easy to forget when you do what we do. So this is not going to show. That might. That might. Fine. Breaking the rules again, but when I broke the rules, you see how that I have my I can't make ugly on the good side because the finger's here. So now the places where your eye might perceive white where it doesn't belong are addressed. And so I used my tip to go right down in there. Another phenomena, which will be apparent on the other kit, is the fact that when you score this, you cut a rut. A score is a valley. And if this is bigger than the valley, it doesn't color in the valley. So I could go back and get the white later. I can also take a crack at it with this and see if I can pull anything out of the fire that way. And we want to see what it looks like when it's done. Let's just say. This is not the right thing to make circles. You need some forgiveness when you do this. I have the old style name branded blade, which is skinnier than this. Nowadays, the people who took over the manufacture of hobby blades of this kind just make this. Well, fine, I think that's a little bit bigger than a quarter inch. What do you want to bet that's a centimeter wide? And it helps. I use these things like shovels, everywhere, all the time. That's what I apply my glue with. Little glue, a lot of glue, all the glue. Now, off camera, I'm going to swipe it on the edge of my desk to even up what I've got on the tip. It just peels off. You know, even if it's your wife's favorite antique, as long as you don't gouge it with a knife blade, who cares? It'll just peel right off. Enough, not too much. There's, less is more with glue, always. And PVA has to wet as well as dry. Glue doesn't dry, it cures. But the point is, it has to get into the surface. Another thing I do to help myself is I getting that edge around on a tighter radius, makes it easier to put together. I got these guys to hand so that I can catch a crimp when I need it. And I'm screwing around letting the PVA cure, which I don't want to do. If it ain't round now, it'll be round when you put something through it to make it round. So panic not, dear friend. My father would marvel when I casually glued pieces of paper edge to edge. I didn't know you couldn't, so it didn't occur to me not to. And darn if it didn't work, so I just let him think I was a bee's knees and moved on with my life. A little bit in there, a lot of ways to get the overglue off. And it's much more forgiving than you might think, because it disappears. Well, you don't get crazy. Now, that ain't no wheel. That doesn't matter right now. Don't be concerned. You're letting the glue cure partially. You're letting the water solvent soak into the parts. You're letting the glue wet. And you do it enough. Only your gut will tell you. If you want to wait 10 seconds before you release it, if you want to wait 30 seconds before you release it, that's fine. That's good. That's enough. It may still move, but it's not going to come apart on you, and that's what you want right now. So I don't care. I'm not concerned if that's not round. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, because the minute this guy goes in, that becomes round, which I'm loath to do right this instant. I don't want to push it back apart again. CA should be cured on this now. Let's see what we got. Ooh, look at there. Weedy go round. Very nice. Very nice. All right, so let's show off. So again, as you go, you learn. The right way to do this is to poke them in there. And don't be concerned because you can go back in and paint the tip to hide make it look a little less like a nail. So for demonstration purposes, there we are. Right. And we have our backs, which we now know what to do with. And in fact, what's going to happen in the future is the back's going to, I'll just glue it and I'll drill it enough, enough, air quotes, and then poke a nail. I don't know. Again, put a pin in it. The idea is to make sure that you can get the glue where it belongs. And if you can't get the glue where it belongs, then it was a pointless exercise. Also, if you try to stick glue down the hole, you're going to glue your wheel shut, which was no. The wheels have to move. Just that's the bottom line. Earlier I bragged on this. Gee whiz, I can cut circles. Well, yeah, I can. And, is that always valuable? No. And there's a real reason for that. I'm going to see if I have another one of those backers somewhere. I probably didn't cut enough yet. No. There is a muscle memory, a subconscious thing that happens if you place the knife against the edge of the ink. You tend to just pull along that line without a whole lot of histrionics. And I'm pulling away from the center a little bit, which I don't want to do, so I'm trying to take it back in a little bit. The difference between doing this, which is fine, and provides a great result. I got a shelf full of things that tell me that cutting them by hand is a good result. And cutting with a pair of scissors will become apparent almost instantly. Random pair of scissors. Same trick. Your eye will tell you where to cut. And you'll be surprised how little it matters that you pay attention to not cutting the part. Anything's possible. If Lieutenant Lori pokes her head in at this moment, if the dog jumps up and bites me, I'm going to cut across this part, say a dirty word, and have to print more. But if I'm focused and at ease, I'll just cut right around this. The benefit is better accuracy, smoother, less humps, and no points off for doing it with scissors. I think it's the only thing I do with scissors when I cut these parts. Scissors on these parts on a straight line would be pointless and annoying, even with something big like Shrek, where I have plates that are as big as my palm that are going to make up his skull. Long straight edges. It's just easier to cut them with a knife. I know that I'm going to get them more accurate. So the cut is smooth and continuous, and you see the humps. Yeah, there you go. See the humps? That's with the knife. It's because the knife has less accuracy than the scissors. So there's a place and a time for scissors doing this work, and it's cutting circles. Case in point. Case in point. Those are the hubs for the other model. This is a different material. This is a mat board. This particular brand has the added benefit of having no logos on the back. That's a very nice round hub because I cut it with a pair of scissors. There's a edge here too. So if you're using, you know, make this is going to be a greebly. It's going to get stuck on a surface. That rounded edge tends to add some, you know, tends to sell it a little instead of just this on there. Okay, this is going to go on the outside. This is going to go on the inside. This has cured now, and it'll round you up really nice here and just directly. I do this a lot of ways. I mean, I can sit there and go after it with a pair of pliers, or I can fold them over this way, tease them this way. I can moosh it. I can moosh it on the table. I can do this. What's probably going to end up happening is, well, I really don't want to moosh it on the table right now because I don't want the glue all over the table. But that tends to bend it over. So that's pretty much in place, and I can work with that. I don't have to think anymore. So, I want the spokes to match. Well, I have a convenient way to do that. That's going to match that. And I can do it on the back side too. That's either way. All right. Ugly. And I can rotate this if it happens to go off kilter. Party. It will come round. I'm going to have to come back with... See, that's poking out. I'll put a dot of glue under there and grab it with a pair of pliers and make it disappear. But I have a nice roundy wheel. I alluded to glue earlier. Well, how is going to be obvious. I'm going to take my backer, and I have my seam. Any one of the spokes will do, as long as one spoke is aligned and it is centered on the back, around, all the way around. The spokes in the front and the spokes in the back will match. Too much, too little, don't know, don't care. What I care about here is it everywhere? Is it all the way out to the edge? Because I need PVA on the edge to catch. See how quick that disappeared? Your fingers, I don't know, I'm going to guess and say the water goes into your skin. It's water that won't hurt you. You don't want to eat PVA, but getting it on your skin won't kill you. And again, you're not going to end up like the doctor show and be stuck to your girlfriend. So I have that painted, you know, that's a pretty significant amount. You see the water curdle in the paper? That's what happened. The water's going to the paper. Paper's curdling. Paper stays flat because it has a certain specific moisture content. And the minute it gains more moisture, it will curl because the fibers expand. So here we go, boys and girls. I have my spoke matched. I have it more or less centered. We'll give it a little love. I'm letting the glue wet. As the glue wets, it begins to cure. And yes, I know there's lead in the middle of this. There's the color in the middle of this. It's flat. It's not going to get in the way. It's not going to make you brown or some colored circle around the edge. There's going to have to be a little love here because that piece is slightly bigger or slightly smaller. Repetitive accuracy can be a challenge with this stuff. Unless when you absolutely positively have to have a bunch of parts exactly the same size, you're just going to have to understand where your error is. So I can get a lot of glue there. Yeah, fine, I can fix that. Got a little residue on the blade. It's already got skin over it, but I can probably get enough in there to make the job happen. In fact, if it's got skin over it, it might bond quicker. And then I have a wheel I can work with. That's going to take a while for that to dry, cure enough, and the water to get out of it, and it to be drier. Another spot probably wants some more glue. Working time is just a thing. And with PVA, a little bit more glue gives a little more working time. Get the ink out of there. And you know what? Some days chicken, some days feathers on that deal. I'm also worried about where I'm going to, leak glue over the side. Let's try that again. I'm not going to color that right away because it's going to be, it needs to be drier, since I'm not going to color it right away. So we're going to, I've already proven that this is the right diameter. I'm in there. Be careful. Don't drill yourself into your finger. I can feel it going through the paper, so I know when to quit. I made a lot of noise about taking the flash off earlier. Let's see if I can make this more elegantly done. Pretty good. Ain't perfect. I'm using the part of the blade that I'm not dragging through paper all the time because it's sharper. And it will tend to cut it. Also moving side to side, so whatever micro serrations in that edge help me do what I need to do. Well, I did it again there. Took a nickel in the paper. Having taken a nickel in the paper with the blade, daub off most of it. You'll be able to see that on close inspection, but more or less it's gone. While I'm there, I need to pretty up this edge. Don't panic, I know. Because when I do that, it's gone. I just disappeared it just by doing that. And I can use my fingers as easily as a pair of pliers, and quite often do. There. That's pretty decent. And now the thing is seated all the way. So I have a wheel. And we now have 3 wheels. I have this one marked by having driven the blade through, the thing through. Now this thing's curling in my hands. We'll cover that sin simply by gluing it flat against the surface that it's going to end up on. That ain't exactly centered. It's not centered well at all. Try to use a finer point, get myself a pilot over to the edge. Anybody who does any carpentry knows that that pretty much doesn't work. And I took the microscopic end of the blade off doing that. So I'm kind of stuck with it. You know it's okay, so let's see if I can cover my tracks later. It's probably deep enough. We're going to paint to cover the thing. We've got our little axles. And to me, it looks like the big pliers work best, you know, magnetic field notwithstanding. There's an edge there, and so you have to push it through the paper. Yeah, okay. We're going to make sure we know where we're going. Push it through the paper. Put a clamp on them. I put a clamp on the bottom of these to hold them. Make them stand that way. But I'm not that bright, so I didn't have time to do that. Here's the CA. I'm going to try putting the CA on this side this time. Every time you try something repetitive as you build these things, you will get better. And the last one will be better than the first. I'm going to whoop that over real quick and get it stomped so that I can get it before the glue cures. Got it. And I'm bending that because when I'm mucking about, so it'll, you know, when things cure up nicely and are cured to finish, well, I can turn that. I didn't paint that. Well, that's the cheapest paint mask I can think of. And it will work very well. I'll do that off camera, but I'll simply keep the Post-it note between me and the paint and keep the amount of paint down, and I'll cover my tracks and probably daub that in too where the thing's pushing through. This guy follows the same principle. Built myself into a corner because I've already put the end on. Well, with the other one, I'll be smarter. I won't put the end on. So I have to be careful how I get the glue in there because I want this guy to move very much. And I've found using steel elsewhere, actually aluminum, the CA will grab that stuff and it just lock up. You just don't have to think about it. I don't know why. Probably the crystalline structure of the surface is what it amounts to. We're going to transition to the other model. The next time you see this, there'll be 2 completed bogies, and we'll be working on the chassis. As I was editing this episode, I found that I just couldn't stop myself from finishing John Jay's original kit. I'll give you a little tour and show you in a slideshow the finished product. All of the concepts that I used to finish that off are presented in one way or another in the other kit, and we'll cover them in more detail as we go. There you go, guys. Scope creep evident everywhere. The lamination of the tool, the Q-tip shafts, marvelous things. I actually wrapped cylinders. There is wooden dowel inside that. Let's get the shake out. There's wooden dowel inside the joints. There's wooden dowel in here. In every case, it allowed me to glue caps on and make the thing look more real and complete. A happy accident with the lens. Since the mat board that the lens is mounted on is black on one side, white on the other, there's a dark line in the back which tends to demarcate the lens itself and give it just a touch more depth. Each of the mounting tabs, a different place than I expected. I thought the corners were where it mounted to the sky crane. It's not the case. I suspect that the corners were actually just bumpers to keep it square. The vehicle locks to the sky crane in these three positions. So I flipped the paper, I colored it black on the back first to make it look more complete, and then folded it over and folded it up. I avoided the strong temptation to drill out those little holes, which should have been done. The high gain mounted on something to give it some depth. These lugs on the four corners mounted with laminated to give them some depth. And an admission of a flat-out failure. These sides I had to cut from the second pattern and put on the outside because I mounted the part backwards. This belonged here and vice versa. It turned out to be a happy accident to the degree that the inside now has greater detail than it once did. The bogies that I've belabored so hard work. The wheels turn. I think we're... It came out much nicer than I expected. The drill bit mounts are optional in the kit, and so I availed myself of them. Give it a little more depth and interest on the forward side. There, right there in that view, you get a really good look at the tool, which looks more like it's something. I suspect that actually those parts fold downward in some way, but in this case I just left it flat. I like it. It has detail in the bottom as well, and it'll certainly get pride of place in the collection. So, next episode, full time, Mr. Pradana's effort. We'll start with the chassis and proceed from there. I'll detail something inside the chassis to stiffen it, and we'll look for opportunities to improve. I can see a place where I would cut these cables out and lay that exact same thing right over top of that. Suddenly there would be depth to the cabling. Similar opportunities all over. So, with that, let me do a little ham-handed Ken Burns and put this one in the can.